What was there before us, before the planet, before everything? Physicists point to the Big Bang. Religions point to God. But what does the ancient Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu say to this? In his famous Tao Te Ching Chapter 21, he explores a mystery which is both invisible and eternal, the source of all of creation. The manifestation of greatest virtue only follows the Tao. The Tao in itself is mysterious and elusive. Mysterious, elusive, but within it there is image. So elusive, so mysterious, but within it there is substance. So deep, so obscure, but within it there is essence. This essence is of utmost reality. Within it there is truth. From ancient times till now, its name does not fade. By it, we see the source of all things. How do I know it is the source of all things? By this. So welcome back everyone on my channel. Today we're looking at a very interesting chapter of the Tao Te Ching, which is chapter 21. Okay, so we start with line 1. The manifestation of the greatest virtue only follows the Tao. So in this line, the relationship of virtue, which is De in Chinese, and Tao, which is the way the things are, is defined. Okay, so the whole Tao Te Ching is the book, the classic of the Tao, the way things should be, and the De, which is how things are acted out in the world, how things are manifested. So this first line basically just lines out the relationship between those two name-giving words in the Tao Te Ching overall. So virtue, the greatest virtue is the manifested Tao. It follows the Tao. Okay, so this is the first statement here by Lao Tzu. He continues, the Tao in itself is mysterious and elusive. Okay, and this is great. And this basically refers to chapter 1 of the Tao Te Ching, where it's said, the Tao which you can name as the Tao is not the true Tao. Okay, so that means that, of course, the Tao is so vast and so mysterious and so elusive that you cannot describe it with words. So with words you run out of options of describing it very fast. So and this line basically underlines that statement. The Tao in itself is mysterious and elusive. So we cannot touch it directly. We cannot see it directly. We cannot grasp it. Okay. So he goes on. Mysterious, elusive, but within it there is image. Okay. What does that mean? That means that when we think about the Tao as the beginning of everything, the Tao as that which comes before everything else, then of course inside of that vastness, inside of that unlimited space which is the Tao, there have to be already the images which are being manifested later on in the world. Okay, if you take the Big Bang, for example, Lao Tzu says here that even before the Big Bang happened, inside of the Big Bang, there have to be the possibilities There have to exist the possibilities for everything which follows after the Big Bang. Okay, so mysterious, elusive, but within it there are images. There is image. Okay, the ideas they already have to be there. Isn't that an interesting thought? So, and this also, you could read this when you think of the Bible, Genesis. When God creates the world, there is this saying, when he creates the man, God made man, created man in his own image. That's the same idea. Like God must have had an image of what he wanted to create in order to create it. Okay? Otherwise, we would look quite differently, I suppose. But there has to be this image in eternity to be formed out later. That is the theory which is outlined here. So, mysterious, elusive, but within it there is image. It goes on. So elusive, so mysterious, but within it there is substance. Okay, this is the same thought. If substance is coming out of that, the Big Bang, out of God, out of the Tao, the idea of substance, or even the foundation of substance, has to be there beforehand inside of the Tao. Okay, so it's elusive, it's mysterious, but within it there has to be substance, or at least the foundation for substance, the idea for substance. So next line, so deep, so obscure, but within it there is essence. So here he's saying, even though this Tao is infinitely deep, infinitely dark, we cannot see it, but there is essence in there. There is something we can grasp because there are images, there's substance. So there has to be an essence to that space. Okay? So he says, this essence is of utmost reality. Of utmost reality, this essence, that's not an idea, it's real, he's saying. Within it, there is truth. Okay, so when we analyze this essence, we find the truth. Okay, we find God, so to speak. We find, what is there behind the image, behind the substance. We can find that. And this brings me to a very interesting thought, because this is quite similar, this line of thinking, of Plato, right? Of Plato's allegory of the cave, right? So in this allegory of the cave, Plato says, okay, when there are people living in a cave and they don't know the outside world, and the only thing they see from the outside world are shadows. So they see shadows of people walking around, shadows of things, of carriages, of animals. Those people will think the shadows are real because they don't know the reality behind the shadows. So Plato says it's only when they get out of the cave and see what produced the shadows, they realize the truth. Okay, and for Plato, this way of grasping the truth is philosophy. And Lao Tzu is saying here that the way of grasping the truth behind the shadows we see, because we don't see the Tao is invisible, but we see the images, we see the substance. So we can grasp the essence of what has to be behind that, behind the truth we're seeing. And by that, we can get an idea of what the Tao is. Okay. So that's pretty similar to Plato's idea here. So it goes on. From ancient times till now, its name does not fade. By it we see the source of all things. This is also very interesting. So he's saying, from ancient times till now, its name does not fade. What does he mean? He means from the beginning of time on, no matter how far back in time we think, people have always had this idea of not being alone in the universe. There always, in every culture, there's an idea of the Holy Spirit, God, deities of all sorts. And there are a lot of different words, but this idea that there has to be something behind all this, that idea is widespread, and every culture has its own ideas. So that's what he's saying. Like for human beings from ancient times till now, its name does not fade, even though the names may be different, because names are never sufficient to describe it, to describe the Tao, to describe God. But it has always been there. And by it always being there, we can see it has to be the source of all things. Okay, and then he is underlining this in saying, how do I know it is the source of all things? By this. Isn't that a nice rhetorical move? So he's saying, like, yeah, where do I know? Why does it has to be the source? Well, look around you, because everything is there. And so that everything is existing is the proof for that being behind everything existing, right? Because without a source, nothing is there. If you think of water, without a source, without a well, there's no stream. Okay, and that's his line of thinking. So how do I know? How do I know it's the source of all things? Well, by just this, everything is there. So there has to be an answer. There has to be a source. Okay, and like I said in the beginning, you might call that source God, you might call it Tao, you might call it the Big Bang, but that is what reality is pointing at. Okay, there has to be a source for everything, for all of creation. And this is Lao Tzu's take on analyzing and finding this exact source. So that's it for chapter 21. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I hope you stay with me, subscribe, and maybe leave a like. I hope to see you back again in chapter 22. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.